Well, let's speak more on this and bring in Peter Zalmayev, who is director of the Eurasia Democracy Initiative. He joins us now. Thank you so much for being with us, Peter. So we've been mentioning there that this draft includes some really significant concessions from Ukraine. Is there any world in which Kyiv would accept this?
Well, this is certainly what Russia is counting on, that this is the world that he would accept it, because as we've been reporting, and as you have been reporting as well, Zelensky has been weakened. He and his government have been weakened by this huge scandal involving malfeasance and outright corruption alleged corruption by some members of his team. And Russia is feeling that the time is auspicious to re-engage with the Trump administration and to try to push through what amounts to yet another attempt at Ukraine's capitulation. I have not seen anything in this plan, and there are various versions of it being circulated. There's very little clarity on exactly what this is if this is a starting point for negotiations or if this is the only sort of version of the document the Russians would agree on. But I don't see any daylight between what Russians had proposed before, what they're proposing now. Official status of the Russian language, army downsizing to 2.5, which is a little slight progress compared to the previous figures, and crucially, leaving the rest of the Donbass that are still the area that is still in Ukrainian hands, and that is a no for both Ukraine and its European allies. So too many questions about this plan, but so far I'm just not liking what I'm seeing.
Well, Peter, you mentioned something really key there. There isn't any daylight between the US and Russian proposals, as you said there. Axios does say that Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, and the Russian envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, were working on this plan together. Where was Ukraine in all of this? Why weren't they included?
That's another reason why European leaders have been so up in arms about these, purported deals and plans, and why last time they decided to visit Washington en masse together to meet with Donald Trump to prevent him from pushing forward any of such, plans. We're seeing that. We're also hearing that Witkoff and company are now thinking up some creative ways to package this and to, let's say, offer Russia to pay some kind of an annual fee for the use of the Donbass, which is an industrial hub of Ukraine. I mean, my question is, which planet are they from? Russia has declared all of Donbass and 3 other oblasts or regions of Ukraine as constitutionally belonging to Russia. Why would Putin, to put ourselves in his shoes, be paying for territory which has now been proclaimed as part of Russia? This is a humiliating step for Putin, and this also shows that the Trump administration remains quite ignorant, either willfully or not, about the root causes of this conflict. I'm also concerned that Donald Trump, now that he's mired in his own sort of set of issues involving Epstein files, may be in a hurry once again to push through a peace deal to show to his electorate how capable he is of, making peace between countries, something he's been claiming. This remains his big prize, peace between Russia and Ukraine. But in his rush for that, he is ignoring all these other, factors, such as what will, be Ukraine's long-term security. Ukraine will disarm itself. Ukraine will give up its land, etc. It will give up on the idea of having or developing long-range missiles so that Russia can re-attack Ukraine from much stronger positions. This is a non-starter for Ukraine.
Well, we can see Russia's position in all of this. We can see what they want. Talk us through what a peace deal with Ukraine would look like. What is Ukraine wanting here?
I think Ukraine wants to hear that Russia would ultimately agree that Ukraine is a sovereign state, and as such, it would maintain a control over its foreign policy choices, whether it, eventually will join NATO or not, whether it will eventually join the European Union or not, that it has a standing army worthy of its name, at least able to, make another invasion by Russia very costly. Putin, and not just some kind of a national guard, a nominal army, sort of like what we're seeing in Belarus next door, that would essentially make Ukraine not just vulnerable to Russia's continued aggression, but essentially turn it into a vassal or state, a protectorate of Russia, where Russia would be calling the shots on everything from foreign policy to internal policy to who the president is going to be, etc. And once again, Russia's another point is that no foreign troops are ever going to be stationed in Ukraine. Well, in the absence of NATO's membership for Ukraine, I'm not seeing any solid guarantee for Ukraine's security. And once again, that makes it a non-starter. We need to see what will replace NATO's membership as guarantor of Ukraine's continued sovereignty.
Well, Peter, you mentioned earlier just how concerned European allies are about this plan. What can they do now? How are they going to be looking to react and act towards this now?
Well, of course, I think a formula has to be found to, that will satisfy our allies that Ukraine is going to deal with this huge corruption scandal that is costing Zelensky and his team huge amount of credibility, how they will deal with it in order to, keep our allies happy and satisfied that, this is just a genuine effort and not just another window dressing element. That is to start with, because, of course, if they were to talk to Trump now and his officials, they will be talking about how corrupt the Ukrainian establishment is. But Europeans also understand that they cannot give up on Ukraine just because there are these issues that have come up. They're very serious, but still, they cannot afford to let Ukraine hang, especially now that Russia is stepping up its, attacks in Pokrovsk and is about possibly to capture the city, the part of Ukraine in the south, etc. So I think the very first thing, obviously, will be to approve another tranche for Ukraine. We're talking about, $6 billion. Otherwise, Ukraine will completely run out of money. By March, Ukraine will be facing serious crunch time. And so some of that money will also go to pay for American-made weapons for Ukraine. So the same old formula. Europeans are ponying up the money, for America's weapons. Trump does not have to do that. That's something he's been able to sell to his electorate. That formula should hold.
Well, Peter, do stay with us, because I do want to go back on something you mentioned earlier about that widening corruption scandal that has gripped Kyiv at the moment. It has weakened Zelensky's political position. France 24's correspondent in Kyiv, Gunnar Cragg, has more now on that scandal and how it can impact discussions on potential peace agreements. Take a listen.
Well, certainly some people think that it has meant that Volodymyr Zelensky is in a weak position, and so it's the biggest crisis that his government has gone through for sure. It's probably the biggest anti-corruption investigation that there's been in Ukraine's history. That doesn't mean that the sums being stolen involved are the highest of any corruption scandal in Ukraine's history, but all the same, it's absolutely rocking the government and preoccupying, I'm sure, most people in politics. It probably means, though, that Volodymyr Zelensky, if he's feeling weakened by this plan, would be by this corruption scandal, would be even less inclined to take this plan seriously, or to even give it the time of day, really, because that would only worsen his popularity if he was seen as caving in. So it just makes it more likely that the Ukrainian side will reject this. Though, of course, Volodymyr Zelensky, ever since February this year, has been very, very careful to try not to anger Donald Trump and to say that he's willing to cooperate and that he's willing to talk. I expect he'll carry on in that same line.
Well, let's bring Peter back in there. I just want to get your reaction to what our correspondent was saying. How do you think this corruption scandal will impact those negotiations for a peace deal?
Well, yes, Zelensky finds himself between a rock and a hard place. As much as Russia has now been on the move in two areas of the front, and this is sort of a breakthrough for them, still going pretty slowly but faster than before. I don't think there's a consensus on the part of Ukrainians at large, of the army, military men and women, that they're ready for capitulatory, essentially, negotiations with Russia. So that leaves Zelensky vulnerable. Yes, he's vulnerable politically, but at the same time, I agree with your correspondent, for him to go ahead and agree to these half-baked plans, including a handover of the Donbass in its entirety for some kind of a fee, which I don't think is I mean, it's not a feasible idea in the first place. But any of these things and a downsizing of the army, etc., will be viewed by Ukrainians as essential capitulation. Zelensky would be, let me put it bluntly, dead meat if he were agree to that.
Well, what is Zelensky's position like now in Ukraine following this corruption scandal? Some in his party are proposing a unity government that would effectively dilute his authority. Is Zelensky on his way out here?
Not really. I mean, we can't. We were stuck in this situation in a very unpleasant kind of status where the president will remain president for as long as this war continues. The Constitution does not allow for the holding of new elections, and that maybe is something that has allowed Zelensky to sort of, detach himself from reality. That people aren't happy about the corruption on the part of his minions, people who surround him. He can claim some plausible deniability that he knew about this. And we're not accusing Zelensky of profiting from this scheme. We don't have the proof yet, but it's still a matter of buck stopping there, meaning that Zelensky, as president, holds the ultimate responsibility for things that have been happening apparently under his nose for months and have involved a wide network of associates. So serious house cleaning of the likes that we had not seen in Ukraine, with people going to jail, with serious investigations, with probably the entire cabinet of ministers, resigning. I mean, nothing short of that will placate the public at this point.
Very much one of the biggest scandals to hit Kyiv. Thank you so much for joining us on the program, Peter. Great to get your thoughts on this issue, and thank you for joining us on Around the World today.